You are not too emotional. You are untrained. Every emotional outburst, every overreaction, every moment you lose control is not a personality flaw. It is a skill you never built. Emotional control is not a gift. It is not luck. It is not something some people are born with. It is a discipline. Right now, your emotions are running your decisions. And when emotions lead, clarity dies. Power disappears. Progress stops. This audiobook will not comfort you. It will train you. You will learn how to stop reacting and start responding. Because the person who controls their emotions controls their life. That's the key. Chapter 1. Stop reacting. Start responding. Reaction is automatic. Response is trained. That's the difference most people never learn. Most people believe their reactions are who they are. They say, "That's just my personality." That's just your conditioning. You don't have a temper. You have a reaction habit. And habits can be changed. You must understand this clearly. Reaction is unconscious. Response is intentional. Reaction happens fast. Response happens after a pause. Reaction is emotional. Response is strategic. Reaction gives your power away. Response takes it back. That's the key. Every time something happens in your life, a comment, a delay, an insult, a failure, you have a choice. You always have a choice. Even when it doesn't feel like it, most people don't pause long enough to see that choice. They react. They explode. They shut down. They argue. They justify. They defend. And every time they do that, they hand control to the situation. You don't control the event. You control the response. Say it again. You don't control the event. You control the response. The event already happened. Your reaction happens after. That means the damage is self-inflicted. Think about it. The comment didn't ruin your day. Your reaction did. The delay didn't steal your peace. Your reaction did. The past didn't control you. Your reaction to remembering it did. That's hard to hear. But it's freeing. Because if your reaction created the problem, your response can end it. You have a choice. Here's the truth most people avoid. Reacting feels powerful in the moment. But it creates weakness long term. It feels good to snap back. It feels good to lash out. It feels good to say exactly what's on your mind. For 5 seconds. Then comes the cost. Damaged relationships. Lost respect. Regret. Embarrassment. Missed opportunities. That's the bill for reacting. Responding doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't feel exciting. It feels boring. But boring wins. Responding protects your energy. Responding preserves your dignity. Responding keeps you in control. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. It's not about being calm all the time. It's about being deliberate. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need approval to think before you speak. You don't need to explain why you didn't react. Silence is a response. Stillness is a response. Walking away is a response. And often, it's the strongest one. You have been trained, whether you realize it or not, to react. By your environment. By your upbringing. By social media. By chaos. Immediate response is rewarded. Fast emotion is encouraged. Outrage gets attention. But attention is not power. Control is power. Here's the discipline you must start practicing immediately. When something triggers you, do not speak first. Do not type first. Do not act first. Even 1 second. That pause is everything. In that pause, you create distance. In that distance, you regain choice. And choice is power. That's the key. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. Your body will want to react. Your mind will rush. That's normal. That's withdrawal. You are breaking a habit. It's not about anger. It's about discipline. It's not about sensitivity. It's about control. Every reaction you stop strengthens the muscle. Every pause you take builds authority. Start small. Traffic. Slow internet. A rude comment. A mistake. These are not problems. They are training sessions. Ask yourself one question in the moment. What response serves me? Not your ego. Not your emotions. Sometimes the best response is silence. Sometimes it's a calm sentence. Sometimes it's no response at all. You don't need their permission to choose peace. Most people think responding makes them weak. That's backwards. Reacting means you were predictable. Responding means you were deliberate. Anyone can react. Animals react. Children react. Leaders respond. High performers respond. The person who controls the response controls the outcome. You don't control the event. You control the response. Burn that into your mind. From now on, you do not ask, "How do I feel?" You ask, "What is the smartest response?" Feelings are information, not instructions. You have a choice. And here's the hardest part. Sometimes the response that gives you power will feel unsatisfying. No drama. No explosion. No emotional release. But it will give you something better. Respect. Clarity. Momentum. Over time, people will notice. They won't say it, but they'll feel it. You're not reactive anymore. You're solid. Unshaken. That's when emotional control stops being an idea and becomes an identity. This chapter is not about perfection. You will still react sometimes. But now you'll see it. And awareness is the beginning of mastery. You caught the reaction. That means you're waking up. And once you can stop reacting, you can start building something far more powerful. Because reacting is unconscious. Responding is trained. And training changes everything. You don't control the event. You control the response. You've learned how to pause. Now it's time to understand why losing control is not passion, it's lack of training. Chapter 2. Emotional outbursts are a lack of training. Losing control is not honesty. It is not passion. It is not being real. It is emotional illiteracy. That's the truth most people don't want to hear. They say, "I just express my feelings." You just never learned how to regulate them. You don't explode because you care deeply. You explode because you are untrained. And no one respects uncontrolled strength. Think about it carefully. A wild animal has strength, but no one calls it powerful. Power is strength under control. That's the key. An emotional outburst is not proof of authenticity. It is proof of a missing skill. When someone yells, slams doors, sends long emotional messages, or loses composure, they believe they are being honest. But honesty without discipline is noise. You have a choice. You can express yourself with control. Or you can leak emotion everywhere and call it truth. One earns respect. The other creates distance. Calm is not weakness. Calm is mastery. Say it again. Calm is not weakness. Calm is mastery. Look at the people you respect most. Not the loudest. Not the most dramatic. The calm ones. Leaders. Fighters. Surgeons. Commanders. High performers. When pressure rises, they slow down. When chaos hits, they become still. Not because they feel nothing, but because they trained. A trained fighter does not flail wildly. They breathe. They see. They choose. An untrained person panics. They swing emotionally. They burn energy fast. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. It's not about emotion. It's about control. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training. That applies to emotions too. Most people never trained emotional control. They inherited reactions. They copied behaviors. They repeated patterns. Then they wonder why they lose control. You didn't lose control. You never built it. That's the key. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Emotional outbursts make people uncomfortable. They may tolerate them. They may excuse them. But they do not respect them. An uncontrolled person is unpredictable. An unpredictable person is unsafe. An unsafe person is avoided. This applies at work, in relationships, in leadership. No one gives responsibility to someone who can't regulate themselves. You don't need their permission to become disciplined. You don't need approval to grow up emotionally. You don't need validation for choosing control. You have a choice. And here's what training actually looks like. Training does not mean suppressing everything until you explode later. That's not control. That's compression. Training means increasing your capacity. Capacity to feel without reacting. Capacity to hear without defending. Capacity to experience without performing emotion. Start with this rule. If your voice rises, your authority drops. If your body tenses, your clarity shrinks. Calm is not weakness. Calm is mastery. This is why high performers are boring in crisis. They don't dramatize. They don't narrate their emotions. They handle the situation. You must stop romanticizing emotional chaos. Passion without control is self-sabotage. You think people respect intensity. They don't. They respect consistency. They respect stability. They respect restraint. It's not about being cold. It's about being solid. Here's a practical instruction you must follow. When emotion spikes, lower your physical output. Slow your breathing. Lower your voice. Relax your jaw. Drop your shoulders. The body leads the mind. That's the key. If your body is calm, your mind follows. If your body is chaotic, your mind obeys. Training emotional control starts physically. You don't argue with emotion. You out-train it. And yes, this takes repetition. You will fail at first. You will catch yourself late. That's fine. Awareness is the first win. Every time you notice the outburst impulse and delay it, even by seconds, you are training. You are building capacity. You are becoming someone who doesn't need to explode to be heard. Because here's another truth. The louder you get, the less people listen. The calmer you stay, the more weight your words carry. Calm is not weakness. Calm is mastery. This is why silence can dominate a room. This is why composure intimidates chaos. You don't need to prove you care by losing control. You prove maturity by holding it. It's not about being emotional. It's about being disciplined. Say it clearly. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Most emotional outbursts come from one belief. If I don't react, I'll be ignored. That belief is false. If you don't react, you stand out. People expect reaction. They don't expect control. And what people don't expect, they respect. You have a choice. The next time emotion rises, don't express it immediately. Contain it. Observe it. Ask one question. What does mastery look like here? Not comfort. Not relief. Mastery. Sometimes mastery speaks. Sometimes it stays silent. Sometimes it walks away. You don't need their permission to choose mastery. And here's the long-term shift you're building. You stop being the emotional one. You become the steady one. That changes how people treat you. That changes how opportunities find you. That changes how you see yourself. You are no longer ruled by impulse. You are trained. And training is freedom. Because when emotions no longer control your behavior, they no longer control your life. Calm is not weakness. Calm is mastery. You've learned that emotional outbursts are not authenticity, they're lack of training. Now it's time to go deeper. Because the next level of control requires understanding a dangerous mistake most people make. They believe their emotions are facts. They are not. You've built control. Now let's dismantle the lie. Chapter 3. Your emotions are not facts. Your emotions feel real. That's why they fool you. They arrive loud. They arrive urgent. They arrive convincing. And most people assume that because an emotion feels strong, it must be true. That assumption ruins lives. Here is the truth you must accept if you want control. Emotions are signals. They are not commands. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you obey it. Say it again. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you obey it. That's the key. An emotion is information passing through your system. Nothing more. Nothing less. Fear does not mean danger. Anger does not mean injustice. Sadness does not mean failure. They mean your nervous system detected something. And detection is not decision. You have a choice. Most people skip this step. They feel something and act immediately. They send the message. They make the decision. They quit. They attack. They retreat. Then later, when the emotion fades, clarity returns. And with clarity comes regret. Acting on emotion creates regret. Acting with clarity creates momentum. This pattern repeats because people treat feelings as facts. I feel disrespected, so I was disrespected. I feel anxious, so something must be wrong. I feel unmotivated, so I should stop. Those are interpretations. Feelings are weather, not terrain. They change. They pass. They lie. Facts stay. Emotions move. That's the difference. Here's the discipline you must build. Separate how you feel from what you do. That separation is emotional adulthood. Children act on feelings. Adults evaluate them. High performers delay action until emotion settles. That's not suppression. That's intelligence. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you obey it. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need approval to question your own emotions. You don't need validation to wait before acting. Here's what emotional maturity actually looks like. You feel anger. You don't deny it. You observe it. You feel fear. You don't shame it. You examine it. You feel sadness. You don't drown in it. You allow it, without letting it drive. That's the key. Most people think control means not feeling. That's wrong. Control means feeling without surrendering. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Here's a real-world example you've lived. You felt angry at someone. At that moment, every word you wanted to say felt justified. Later, hours or days later, you realized you were wrong, or exaggerated, or unfair. The emotion was real. The conclusion was false. That's why emotions are not facts. Another example. You felt unmotivated, so you assumed you were tired, burned out, or incapable. But when you started anyway, momentum appeared. The feeling lied. Action corrected it. That's how this works. Emotions often follow action, not the other way around. Waiting to feel ready is how people stay stuck. You have a choice. You can let feelings dictate behavior, or you can let principles do it. Principles create consistency. Feelings create chaos. This is why disciplined people outperform emotional people, even when they feel the same emotions. The difference is obedience. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you obey it. Burn that into your mind. Now here's the behavioral instruction you must apply. When a strong emotion hits, do not ask, "What should I do?" Ask this instead. If I were calm, what would I decide? That question bypasses emotion and accesses clarity. That's the key. Clarity already exists. Emotion is just blocking access. Your job is not to kill emotion. Your job is to outlast it. Most emotions peak and fall within minutes if you don't feed them. Feeding emotion means replaying the story, justifying the feeling, talking about it endlessly, acting on it. Stop feeding it. Let it pass. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need approval to wait. You don't need to explain your restraint. Silence is often the smartest move when emotion is loud. And here's another hard truth. People who always act on emotion become predictable. Predictability makes you controllable. Anyone can trigger you if they know your emotional buttons. That's dangerous. Emotional discipline is not just self-control. It's self-defense. You have a choice. Every time you choose clarity over impulse, you strengthen the skill. Every time you delay action until emotion settles, you build authority. This does not mean you ignore emotions forever. It means you schedule them. You can reflect later. You can journal later. You can process later. But you do not decide in the storm. That's the rule. Storm decisions sink ships. Calm decisions build direction. Acting on emotion creates regret. Acting with clarity creates momentum. Say it again. Acting on emotion creates regret. Acting with clarity creates momentum. This chapter is where many people fail, because it removes their favorite excuse. I felt like it. Feeling is not a justification. Feeling is a signal. And signals require interpretation, not obedience. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you obey it. Once you internalize this, your life changes. Arguments decrease. Mistakes reduce. Self-respect increases. You stop apologizing for emotional decisions. You stop repairing damage you didn't need to create. You move forward cleaner. This is emotional control in action. You've learned to stop reacting. You've learned that outbursts are lack of training. Now you understand the truth. Emotions are not facts. They are data. And data must be analyzed, not followed blindly. You're building clarity. But clarity requires space. And that space comes from one skill most people never develop: the pause. You've questioned emotion. Now you must master the gap between feeling and action. That's where power lives. Chapter 4. The pause is where power lives. There is a space most people never enter. A space between what happens and what they do next. That space is the pause. And the pause is where power lives. Most people live their entire lives without ever stepping into that space. They move from stimulus to reaction instantly. No gap. No awareness. No choice. Something happens. They react. Someone speaks. They explode. A problem appears. They panic. And then they call it fate. Personality. Bad luck. It's a missing skill. The pause between stimulus and response is the skill that changes everything. That's the key. 1 second of silence can prevent years of damage. Think about that. 1 second. 1 breath. 1 moment of restraint. That's all it takes to stop a message you regret. An argument that scars. A decision that derails your life. But most people never take that second. Because the ego hates silence. The ego wants movement, expression, release. But power does not rush. Power waits. You have a choice. Every situation gives you two paths. React immediately, or pause briefly. One path gives relief. The other gives control. Most people choose relief. They vent. They speak. They act. And relief feels good, for a moment. Then comes the cost. The pause feels uncomfortable. It feels tense. It feels unnatural. That's because you were never trained. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is growth. That's the key. The pause is not passive. It is active discipline. You are not doing nothing. You are doing the most important thing. You are interrupting the pattern. Observe. Decide. Say it slowly. Observe. Decide. That sequence is emotional control in action. First, you stop the automatic reaction. Second, observe. You notice what you feel without obeying it. Third, decide. You choose the response that serves you. Not your ego. Not your emotions. Just because you feel urgency does not mean urgency exists. Urgency is often manufactured by emotion. Anger says, act now. Fear says, escape now. Ego says, defend now. The pause exposes the lie. That's the key. When you pause, you reclaim authority over yourself. And self-authority is the foundation of all power. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need approval to stay silent. You don't need to explain why you didn't react. Silence is not weakness. Silence is control. Look at anyone who intimidates chaos. They don't rush. They don't fidget. They don't fill space with noise. They pause. That pause communicates something without words. I am not controlled by this. That energy shifts rooms. That presence changes dynamics. Most people talk themselves into trouble. The disciplined person waits. 1 second of silence can prevent years of damage. Say it again. 1 second of silence can prevent years of damage. Now let's get practical. Here is how you train the pause. You do not wait for big moments. You train in small ones. Traffic. Delays. Interruptions. Minor disrespect. These are not annoyances. They are practice. When something triggers you, do not fix it immediately. Do not respond immediately. Physically stop. Close your mouth. Unclench your jaw. Lower your shoulders. The body first. Boys. That's the key. If you try to pause mentally while your body is tense, you will fail. Relax the body, the mind follows. Then observe. Name what's happening internally. I feel anger. I feel urgency. I feel attacked. Notice the feeling without feeding it. No stories. No justifications. No rehearsals. Just observation. This step alone breaks most emotional spirals. Because emotions need stories to survive. Starve the story. The emotion weakens. Then, decide. Ask one question. What response gives me power here? Not comfort. Not release. Power. Sometimes power speaks. Sometimes it stays silent. Sometimes it walks away. You have a choice. Most people never ask that question. They let emotion decide for them. That's why they stay reactive. This chapter is where you stop being reactive. The pause is where you take back time. Time between impulse and action. And whoever controls that time controls themselves. That's the key. Here's something important. The pause will feel fake at first. You will feel like you are holding back. Like you are being unnatural. That means you are breaking conditioning. Reaction feels natural because you practiced it for years. Control feels unnatural because you're new to it. That changes. With repetition, the pause becomes automatic. And when the pause becomes automatic, power becomes effortless. You don't need to announce your pause. You don't need to justify it. You pause because you can. That confidence compounds. People start adjusting to you. They slow down. They choose words carefully. Because they feel your control. Observe. Decide. Burn it into your nervous system. This is not philosophy. This is behavioral training. And here's the deeper truth. The pause doesn't just protect you from bad decisions. It creates space for better ones. In that space, clarity appears. Perspective widens. Options multiply. Most bad decisions come from speed. Most good decisions come from patience. The pause is patience in action. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. Every time you pause, you are telling your mind, I am in control. And the mind listens. Over time, emotional spikes soften. Triggers lose their grip. Your baseline becomes calmer. Not because life is easier, but because you are stronger. You are training emotional authority. And authority always begins within. You've learned that emotions are not facts. You've learned not to obey every feeling. Now you've learned the tool that makes that possible. The pause. You mastered the pause. Now you're ready for the next level. Because power is not just pausing once. It's learning how to separate who you are from what you feel. It's time to stop saying, I am angry, and start seeing emotion as something that passes through you. You created space. Now let's create identity. Chapter 5. Stop identifying with your feelings. Most people don't just feel emotions. They become them. They don't say, anger is present. They say, I am angry. And that one sentence quietly destroys control. Saying, I am angry, traps you. Saying, anger is present, frees you. That's the key. The moment you say, I am, you turn a temporary state into an identity. You fuse yourself to a feeling that was never meant to stay. And once emotion becomes identity, control disappears. You don't manage something you believe you are. You defend it. You justify it. You protect it. That's why emotional people feel attacked when you challenge their feelings. You're not questioning the emotion, you're questioning their identity. That's dangerous. You are not your emotions. Say it clearly. You feel emotions. You are not emotions. Say it again. You feel emotions. You are not emotions. This distinction is the difference between maturity and chaos. Children say, I am mad. Adults say, I feel anger. One is possessed. The other is observing. You have a choice. Every time an emotion arises, you can merge with it, or you can observe it. Most people merge automatically. They don't even know they're doing it. Emotion appears. Identity follows. I am anxious. I am depressed. I am overwhelmed. Anxiety is present. Sadness is present. Overwhelm is present. Those are experiences, not definitions. That's the key. When you identify with emotion, 3 things happen. First, the emotion lasts longer. Second, it feels stronger. Third, it controls behavior. Because identity demands expression. If you believe I am angry, then acting angry feels authentic. Calm feels fake. But if anger is just present, calm is available. You don't need their permission to separate yourself from emotion. You don't need approval to stop narrating your feelings as identity. You don't need validation to change the language in your own mind. Language shapes behavior. Change the language. Change the outcome. This chapter is about reclaiming the position of observer. You are not inside the emotion. The emotion is inside you, temporarily. You are the container, not the content. That's the key. Here's the practical discipline you must apply. The moment you notice a strong emotion, stop using I am. Replace it immediately. I am angry becomes anger is present. I am anxious becomes anxiety is present. I am unmotivated becomes low motivation is present. This small shift creates distance. Distance creates control. Control creates choice. You have a choice. This is not semantics. This is psychological leverage. When you observe emotion, you can study it. Where is it in the body? What triggered it? Is it rising or falling? You can't study something you think you are. Imagine trying to examine a storm while standing in the middle of it. Observation requires separation. That's the key. Most people drown in emotion because they never step out of it. They identify. They personalize. They dramatize. And emotion feeds on attention. When you identify with emotion, you give it center stage. When you observe emotion, it loses intensity. This is why mindfulness works, not because it calms you magically, but because it restores identity. Observer over experience. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Now let's address a dangerous misunderstanding. Detaching from emotion does not mean suppressing it. Suppression is force. Observation is awareness. Suppressed emotions come back stronger. Observed emotions pass faster. You don't fight emotion. You outgrow it. That's the key. Here's a real-world example. Someone disrespects you. Anger appears. If you say, I am angry, you are now obligated to act angry to stay consistent with your identity. If you say, anger is present, you have options. You can speak calmly. You can stay silent. You can walk away. You didn't deny the emotion. You just didn't let it define you. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you obey it. This chapter builds directly on the pause. The pause creates space. This chapter tells you who occupies that space. Not emotion. The observer. You have been conditioned to think emotions are you. They are not. You were someone before the emotion appeared. You'll be someone after it leaves. That means it was never you. That's the key. Here's another instruction. Stop telling emotional stories about yourself. I'm just an anxious person. I'm an angry person. I'm a sensitive person. Those are emotional identities, and they become self-fulfilling. What you identify with, you reinforce. What you observe, you regulate. Choose carefully. You have a choice. Every day, every trigger, every moment, you choose identity. Are you the emotion, or the one noticing it? This choice determines everything. When you stop identifying with feelings, something powerful happens. You stop taking things personally. You stop defending emotional reactions. You stop arguing from impulse. You gain neutrality. And neutrality is strength. Calm neutrality allows you to think clearly, to speak precisely, to act deliberately. That's emotional control. And emotional control is a skill. You don't need their permission to practice this. You don't need approval to be internally disciplined. You don't need to explain your emotional restraint. Most people won't understand it anyway. They think intensity equals depth. It doesn't. Depth is measured by control. You feel emotions. You are not emotions. Burn that into your identity. This chapter is where emotional intelligence becomes real. Not theory. Practice. Language. Observation. Separation. And once you stop identifying with emotion, you can train it. You can expose yourself to discomfort without breaking. You can stay present under pressure. You can handle more without collapsing. That's the next level. Because control is not built once. It's built daily. You separated identity from emotion. Now it's time to build discipline through repetition. Because mastery is not an event. It's training. Chapter 6. Emotional discipline is daily training. Emotional control is not a breakthrough. It is not an insight. It is not a moment. It is training. And training is boring, repetitive, and unglamorous. That's why most people never master it. They want a trick, a mindset shift, a quote that fixes everything. But control is built the same way muscles are built. Repetition. Under resistance. That's the key. No one wakes up strong. They become strong by lifting when it's uncomfortable. Emotional discipline works the same way. You don't become calm by understanding calm. You become calm by practicing restraint daily. You have a choice. You can treat emotional control like theory or like training. Theory feels good. Training changes you. Most people wait for big moments to test themselves. A major argument, a crisis, a betrayal. That's too late. You don't train during the championship. You train before it. Small daily moments are your training ground. Traffic, delays, waiting, minor criticism, interruptions. These are not inconveniences. They are reps. Train in small moments so you don't break in big ones. Say it again. Train in small moments so you don't break in big ones. That's the key. Most emotional breakdowns don't come from massive events. They come from accumulated weakness. Too many small reactions. Too many unchecked impulses. Too many moments where discipline was skipped. Then one big thing happens, and the system collapses. Not because the event was too big, but because training was absent. It's not about anger. It's about discipline. It's not about stress. It's about discipline. It's not about sensitivity. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Daily emotional training looks like this. You get stuck in traffic. Your body tightens. Irritation appears. That is a rep. You pause. You breathe. You release tension. You just trained. Someone criticizes you lightly. Your ego wants to defend. That is a rep. You stay silent. You listen. You respond later. You just trained. Plans change unexpectedly. Frustration rises. That is a rep. You adapt without complaint. You just trained. Most people waste these moments. They react automatically and move on. You don't. You collect reps. You don't need their permission to train. You don't need approval to stay composed. You don't need validation to choose discipline over expression. Training is invisible. Results are not. Here's the mistake people make. They think emotional discipline means never reacting. Wrong. Discipline means recovering faster, catching yourself sooner, interrupting patterns earlier, reducing intensity quicker. Progress is not perfection. Progress is reduced recovery time. That's the key. Last year, maybe anger lasted hours. Now it lasts minutes. Last month, frustration ruined your day. Now it fades quickly. That's training working. You don't shame yourself for reactions. You analyze them. What triggered it? What was the body doing? What thought fed it? Every reaction is feedback. Feedback makes you stronger. If you use it, you have a choice. You can judge yourself emotionally or coach yourself intelligently. Coaching builds skill. Judgment builds stagnation. Treat yourself like an athlete. Athletes don't quit after a bad rep. They adjust form. Emotional discipline is form. Posture, breathing, timing, restraint. Your body is the training tool. If your body is tense, your emotions will spike. So discipline starts physically. Relax the jaw. Lower the shoulders. Slow the breath. That's not relaxation. That's control. That's the key. You are teaching your nervous system that discomfort is survivable. That delays panic. That softens impulse. That increases capacity. Capacity is everything. A person with low emotional capacity breaks easily. A person with high capacity absorbs pressure calmly. Capacity is built, not wished for. Train in small moments so you don't break in big ones. Now here's another truth. Most people sabotage their training by indulging emotion privately. They don't react outwardly, but they replay the story inside. Rehearsing arguments. Rewriting conversations. Feeding resentment. That's not discipline. That's internal reaction. Training includes mental restraint. When the story starts, cut it. No replay. No justification. No fantasy arguments. Silence the narrative. That's the rep most people skip. And it's the most important one. That's the key. You don't need their permission to stop feeding emotion. You don't need approval to drop a thought. You don't need closure from others to move on. You close the loop yourself. That is power. Daily training also means choosing exposure. You don't avoid discomfort forever. You increase tolerance. Stay in situations slightly longer than comfortable. Hold silence slightly longer than usual. Delay reactions slightly more each time. That's progressive overload. Just like the gym. Small increases. Consistent effort. And one day, what used to trigger you doesn't. Not because life got easier, but because you got trained. That's emotional strength. And emotional strength creates freedom. Freedom from impulsive behavior. Freedom from regret. Freedom from being controlled. You have a choice. Train daily, quietly, consistently. Or stay reactive and call it personality. One path builds respect. The other builds excuses. Most people want to be calm in chaos. But calm is not summoned. It is practiced. Every small moment you master makes the next one easier. Momentum builds. Identity shifts. You stop being someone who tries to stay calm. You become someone who is calm. That's the transformation. You've learned how to pause. You've learned how to observe. You've learned how to separate identity from emotion. Now you're training. But training does more than build control. It changes how others experience you. And that creates a new dynamic. Because once you are disciplined, others lose power over you. And that's where things get dangerous for them. You've trained yourself. Now let's expose the truth. Uncontrolled emotions make people easy to manipulate. And controlled people are hard to touch. Chapter 7. Why emotional people are easy to control. Here is a truth most people avoid. Anyone who can trigger you can manipulate you. That's not philosophy. That's mechanics. If someone can press an emotional button inside you, they don't need power over your body. They already have power over your behavior. That's the key. Most people think control looks aggressive. It doesn't. Real control is subtle, quiet, invisible, and emotional people are the easiest targets. Because they react on cue. Say it clearly. If they control your emotions, they control you. Say it again. If they control your emotions, they control you. Every emotional reaction is a signal. It tells the world where your weaknesses are. What angers you? What scares you? What makes you defensive? And the moment someone learns that, leverage appears. You have a choice. You can protect your emotional buttons, or you can leave them exposed and wonder why you feel drained, manipulated, and exhausted. Look around you. Media thrives on emotional chaos. News headlines are not designed to inform you. They are designed to trigger you. Anger, fear, outrage, anxiety. Because calm people don't scroll endlessly. Triggered people do. That's the business model. If you are constantly emotional, you are constantly profitable to someone else. That's the key. Social media rewards reaction, not reflection. Fast opinions, hot takes, instant outrage. The algorithm doesn't want you thoughtful. It wants you reactive. Because reaction equals engagement. And engagement equals money. You don't need their permission to step out of this cycle. You don't need approval to protect your mind. You don't need validation to stop consuming emotional poison. You have a choice. Now let's make this personal. Think about the people in your life who frustrate you the most. They don't need to argue with you. They just say one sentence. And suddenly you're tense, defensive, emotionally charged. That's control. They don't raise their voice. They don't force you. They trigger you, and you do the rest. Anyone who can trigger you can manipulate you. That's the rule. This is why emotional discipline is not optional. It's self-defense. Uncontrolled emotion makes you predictable. Predictability makes you exploitable. And exploitation rarely looks like force. It looks like influence. People who lack emotional control are easy to provoke, easy to distract, easy to steer. A calm person is hard to move. That's the key. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people will intentionally trigger you, not because they're evil, but because it works. They get reactions. They get attention. They get power. And every time you react emotionally, you reward the behavior. You teach them what works. You don't need their permission to stop playing this game. You don't need approval to stop reacting. You don't need to explain your silence. Silence removes leverage. That's power. Now let's talk about environments. Chaotic environments create emotional people. Noise, pressure, urgency, constant stimulation. These environments exhaust your nervous system, and exhausted systems lose control. That's why emotional discipline includes environmental discipline. You cannot stay calm in a chaotic environment forever. Something has to change, either the environment or your exposure to it. You have a choice. Reduce unnecessary input. Reduce emotional media. Reduce conversations that go nowhere. Not everything deserves your attention. Attention is energy, and energy is finite. If you waste it on emotional noise, you will have none left for clarity. That's the key. Here's the transformation instruction. Start treating emotional triggers like security breaches. When something triggers you, don't justify it. Investigate it. Why did this affect me? What belief did it touch? What expectation was violated? Triggers reveal weak points. And weak points are training targets. This is how emotional control turns into strength. You don't avoid triggers forever. You neutralize them. By exposure. By observation. By restraint. Each time you refuse to react, the trigger loses power. Over time, it stops working. That's discipline. If they control your emotions, they control you. So you take control back. Not by fighting. Not by arguing. By not reacting. This is why calm people scare manipulators. Because calm people are unpredictable. They don't respond on cue. They don't give instant feedback. They don't leak information. No leverage. That's the key. Now understand this clearly. This chapter is not about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming unmovable. Warm when appropriate. Firm when needed. Silent when necessary. Emotional control gives you range. Uncontrolled emotion gives you one mode. And one mode people are easy to handle. You don't need their permission to change how you show up. You don't need approval to protect your emotional space. You don't need validation to step back. Most people will resist your calm because it removes their influence. Expect that. That resistance is proof you're changing. You have a choice. Continue reacting and stay controllable, or build discipline and become sovereign. Sovereignty starts inside. Once emotions no longer control your behavior, manipulation fails. Pressure loses grip. Provocation loses effect. Chaos loses pull. That's emotional mastery. And emotional mastery changes how the world treats you. Because once people realize they can't move you emotionally, they start respecting you. Or avoiding you. Either way, control is yours. If they control your emotions, they control you. But once you control your emotions, no one controls you. You've learned how manipulation works. You've seen how emotional chaos is exploited. Now it's time to flip the equation. Because calm is not just protection. It's an advantage. And in a world addicted to noise, calm dominates. You've removed leverage from others. Now let's talk about what calm actually gives you. Because calm is more than defense. It's dominance. Chapter 8. Calm is a competitive advantage. In chaos, the calm person wins by default. Not because they are smarter. Not because they are stronger. But because everyone else is distracted. That's the key. Most people think competition is about effort, aggression, intensity. It's not. Competition is about clarity under pressure. And clarity only exists where calm exists. The calmest person in the room has the power. Say it again. The calmest person in the room has the power. When emotions rise, most people shrink mentally. Their vision narrows. Their thinking becomes reactive. They speak too much. They reveal too much. The calm person does none of that. They see the whole board. You have a choice. You can join the chaos, or you can stand above it. One choice makes you average. The other makes you dangerous, in the best way. Calm is not passive. Calm is precision. In high-pressure environments, calm becomes a weapon. Meetings, negotiations, conflicts, crises. When everyone is emotionally charged, the calm person sets the pace. They slow the room down. They control the tone. They influence outcomes without force. That's authority. Authority is not volume. It's presence. That's the key. People instinctively look to the calm person for direction. Because calm signals confidence. Calm signals stability. Calm signals competence. Emotional control increases respect, influence, and authority. Not because you demand it, because you embody it. Think about leaders you respect. They don't rush. They don't panic. They don't over-explain. They listen. They pause. They speak last. That's not accidental. That's trained. The calmest person in the room has the power. Most people sabotage themselves by thinking calm makes them invisible. Wrong. Calm makes you memorable. In a room full of noise, silence stands out. In a group full of reaction, restraint commands attention. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need approval to stay composed. You don't need validation to refuse emotional chaos. Calm is self-generated. And once you own it, no one can take it from you. You have a choice. React emotionally and compete on impulse. Or stay calm and compete on intelligence. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people cannot tolerate calm. It exposes them. When you stay calm, others feel rushed. When you stay calm, others feel insecure. When you stay calm, others reveal themselves. They talk more. They justify more. They escalate. And in that escalation, they lose leverage. That's the key. Calm creates asymmetry. You stay still. They move. You listen. They speak. You wait. They act prematurely. Who has the advantage? You do. This applies everywhere. In arguments, the calm person controls the frame. In business, the calm negotiator gets better terms. In relationships, the calm partner sets boundaries without force. Emotional control increases respect, influence, and authority. Because people trust what feels stable. Instability repels. Here's the discipline you must practice. When tension rises, lower your output. Not because you're afraid, because you're strategic. Lower your voice. Slow your speech. Reduce words. That alone shifts power. Most people match intensity automatically. You don't. You said it. That's the key. Calm is contagious, but only if you maintain it. If you break, chaos wins. So you train calm like a competitive edge. You don't wait for pressure. You rehearse it. Visualize stressful scenarios. Rehearse staying slow. Practice pausing before responding. That's not weakness. That's preparation. Professional fighters train under stress so they don't freeze in the ring. You train calm so you don't lose control in life. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Now understand this. Calm does not mean agreeable. You can be calm and firm. Calm and assertive. Calm and unyielding. In fact, firmness lands harder when delivered calmly. Anger dilutes the message. Calm sharpens it. That's the key. People argue with anger. They listen to calm. When you stay calm, your words carry weight. When you lose control, your words get dismissed. That's the hidden advantage. Most people burn influence by overreacting. You conserve it. And influence compounds. One calm interaction builds reputation. Repeated calm interactions build authority. Authority changes how people treat you before you even speak. That's power. The calmest person in the room has the power. But here's the part most people miss. Calm is rare. And rarity creates value. In a world addicted to urgency, calm is premium. In a culture of outrage, restraint is elite. You separate yourself instantly by staying composed. You don't need their permission to be different. You don't need approval to be disciplined. You don't need to explain your restraint. Let results speak. And they will. Because calm does something else. It gives you time. Time to think. Time to notice. Time to choose. And time is the real advantage. Everyone else is rushing. You're deciding. That's the key. Here's your transformation instruction. Stop trying to win emotionally. Start trying to win strategically. Winning emotionally feels good now. Winning strategically pays later. Every time you choose calm over reaction, You invest in long-term advantage. That's how high performers separate, not by effort alone, but by emotional efficiency. You have a choice. Be loud and forgettable, or calm and influential. One path exhausts you. The other elevates you. Calm is not a personality trait. It's a skill. And skills can be trained. You've learned how emotional chaos makes people controllable. You've learned how calm removes leverage. Now you understand the upside. Calm is not just defense. It's offense. It positions you above the noise. It gives you control of outcomes. It makes people adjust to you. But there's another layer. Calm on the outside requires detachment on the inside. Because if you're still emotionally entangled, calm becomes fragile. True calm comes from distance. From stepping back mentally. And that's what we train next. You've built control. You've built advantage. Now let's build clarity. Because the clearest thinkers are the most dangerous. Chapter 9. Detach to think clearly. Most people think detachment means you don't care. That's wrong. Detachment is not indifference. It is clarity without noise. That's the key. When you are emotionally attached, everything feels urgent, personal, heavy. When you are detached, you can finally see. Step back to see clearly. Say it again. Step back to see clearly. Detachment is the skill that turns emotional control into strategic thinking. Without detachment, calm is fragile. With detachment, calm becomes permanent. You have a choice. You can stay inside the emotion, or you can step outside it and observe. One traps you. The other frees you. Most bad decisions come from closeness. Too close to the problem. Too close to the person. Too close to the emotion. Closeness distorts perception. Distance restores truth. That's the key. Think about it. When you're inside a storm, all you feel is rain and wind. When you step back, you see the storm's size, direction, and limits. Detachment gives you that view. It does not remove responsibility. It removes distortion. Distance gives perspective. Perspective creates better decisions. This is why emotional people repeat mistakes. They are too close to their feelings to question them. They say, "This feels right. I trust my gut. I know what I feel." Feelings don't see the full picture. Perspective does. And perspective requires space. Step back to see clearly. Here's the hard truth. Attachment feels like loyalty, but it often becomes blindness. You get attached to being right, attached to outcomes, attached to how others see you. And attachment creates suffering. Because anything you're attached to can be threatened. Detachment removes threat. You don't need their permission to detach. You don't need approval to create mental distance. You don't need validation to step back before deciding. Detachment is internal. No one has to know. Now let's define detachment properly. Detachment is not avoidance. It's not coldness. It's not withdrawal. Detachment is choosing to see clearly before acting. You still act. You still care. You just don't let emotion distort judgment. That's the key. Here's what attachment sounds like. I need this to work. They shouldn't treat me this way. I can't lose this. They must understand me. Every must is attachment. And attachment creates pressure. Pressure narrows thinking. Narrow thinking leads to bad decisions. Detachment releases pressure. When you detach, options appear. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop chasing validation. You stop arguing with reality. You have a choice. Force things emotionally, or observe them strategically. Now let's get practical. Detachment starts with one question. What am I too close to right now? The person? An outcome? An idea? An identity? Name it. Awareness creates space. That's the key. Next, mentally step back. Imagine you're watching the situation from above. No opinions. No judgments. Just facts. What is actually happening? What is within your control? What is not? This instantly reduces emotional noise. Because emotion feeds on personal interpretation. Detachment removes personalization. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is happening? That shift alone changes everything. Step back to see clearly. Here's another truth. Emotion wants immediate resolution. Detachment allows delayed decision. Delayed decision is often the smartest move. You don't decide when emotions are loud. You decide when clarity returns. And clarity always returns, if you wait. You don't need their permission to wait. You don't need approval to delay a response. You don't need to explain why you didn't decide yet. Time is an ally when you are detached. Now understand this. Detachment does not mean you never commit. It means you commit consciously. You don't drift into decisions. You choose them. That's discipline. It's not about caring less. It's about thinking better. Say it clearly. It's not about caring less. It's about thinking better. Detachment also protects you from manipulation. When you are emotionally attached, people can pull you. Praise pulls you. Criticism pulls you. Fear pulls you. When you detach, those pulls weaken. You still hear feedback. It just doesn't hijack you. That's power. Step back to see clearly. Here's a real-world example. You receive criticism. Attached response. Defend. Justify. Argue. Detached response. Listen. Extract useful information. Discard the rest. Same situation. Different outcome. Detachment turned noise into data. That's the key. Another example. You want something badly. Attached response. Anxiety. Overthinking. Desperation. Detached response. Effort without obsession. Flexibility. Patience. Detachment increases effectiveness. Because desperation clouds judgment. Calm distance sharpens it. Most people fear detachment because they think they'll lose motivation. The opposite is true. Attachment drains energy. Detachment preserves it. You stop leaking energy into worry, fear, and mental noise. That energy returns as focus. You have a choice. Attach emotionally and burn energy, or detach mentally and conserve it. This chapter is about reclaiming mental altitude. Altitude gives vision. Vision gives direction. And direction creates momentum. Distance gives perspective. Perspective creates better decisions. Say it again. Distance gives perspective. Perspective creates better decisions. Now here's the discipline you must practice daily. Before any important decision, pause and detach. Ask 3 questions. What are the facts? What am I feeling? What would I advise someone else to do here? That last question is detachment in action. You already know the answer when emotion is removed. You just have to access it. Step back to see clearly. Over time, detachment becomes your default. You stop drowning in situations. You start navigating them. You stop reacting emotionally. You start responding intelligently. This is emotional mastery reaching its peak. You can now pause, observe, detach, decide. That sequence makes you dangerous, in the best way. You've learned how to control emotion. You've learned how to gain advantage. You've learned how to think clearly. Now comes the final shift. Because emotional control is not complete until it becomes identity. Not something you do, but who you are. You're done reacting. You're done training. Now it's time to lock it in. To become the kind of person who is calm by default. This is not motivation. This is identity. Chapter 10. Build the identity of control. At this level, motivation no longer matters. Let that sink in. Motivation is temporary. Emotion-based. Unreliable. Identity is permanent. Stable. Self-reinforcing. You don't try to be calm. You become someone who is calm. That's the key. Most people fail at emotional control because they treat it like a mood. I'll stay calm today. I'll try not to react. Trying is weak. Trying means negotiation. Trying means conditions. Trying means excuses. Identity does not negotiate. Identity acts automatically. You don't wake up and try to be who you are. You just are. That's the level you're building now. Identity beats motivation every time. Say it again. Identity beats motivation every time. Motivation asks, do I feel like it? Identity says, this is what I do. That's power. Up to this point, you've been training skills. Pausing. Observing. Detaching. Responding. Now those skills must harden into identity. Because skills without identity collapse under pressure. Identity holds. You have a choice. You can keep treating emotional control as something you practice, or you can make it who you are. One fades. The other compounds. This chapter is where control becomes automatic. Here's the shift you must make. Stop asking, how should I respond? Start stating, I don't react impulsively. That sentence matters. Identity is built through declarations followed by evidence. Small evidence. Daily evidence. Every time you pause, you reinforce identity. Every time you stay calm, you confirm it. Over time, the mind stops questioning. It accepts. This is who I am now. Say it clearly. This is who I am now. That phrase is not affirmation. It's alignment. You are aligning behavior with identity. And identity reshapes behavior. That's the key. Most people let emotions define who they are. I'm an angry person. I'm anxious. I'm sensitive. Those identities trap them. You are doing the opposite. You are choosing identity deliberately. I am composed. I am disciplined. I respond, not react. These are not wishes. They are standards. Standards don't bend when emotions rise. You don't need their permission to define yourself. You don't need approval to choose a new identity. You don't need validation to outgrow the old one. Identity is internal. No one votes on it. Now understand something critical. Identity is not built by thinking. It's built by behavior under pressure. Anyone can say, I'm calm, when life is easy. Identity is proven when stress hits. That's why the training mattered. You trained daily so identity could form. Train in small moments so you don't break in big ones. That training created consistency. Consistency created evidence. Evidence created belief. Belief created identity. That's the sequence. Now calm is no longer effort. It's default. You don't fight emotions anymore. You don't suppress them. You notice them and move on. Because your identity is not emotional. It's disciplined. Say it clearly. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Identity simplifies decisions. When something triggers you, there's no debate. You already know how you respond. You pause. You observe. You decide. Because that's who you are. This is why identity beats motivation. Motivation fluctuates. Identity remains. Motivation needs energy. Identity conserves it. Motivation burns out. Identity compounds. You have a choice. Live reactively and manage damage. Or live deliberately and build reputation. Reputation follows identity. People start to describe you differently. He's calm. She's solid. They don't panic. That reputation opens doors. Not because you asked for respect, but because you earned it through consistency. That's authority. Authority is not claimed. It's observed. And emotional authority is rare. That makes it valuable. Now here's the discipline that locks identity in. Stop explaining yourself. People with weak identity over-explain. People with strong identity act. You don't justify calm. You don't defend restraint. You don't announce discipline. You live it. Silently. That's the key. Another instruction. Stop rehearsing emotional stories about who you used to be. I used to be reactive. I'm trying to change. Drop that language. Past identity dies when you stop feeding it. You are not becoming calm. You are calm. This is who I am now. Say it again. This is who I am now. Identity also means boundaries. You don't stay in environments that erode control. You don't engage in conversations that drag you down. You don't consume content that agitates you. Not because you're fragile, because you're disciplined. A disciplined identity protects its standards. That's self-respect. You don't need their permission to walk away from chaos. You don't need approval to choose peace. You don't need validation to maintain control. Control is non-negotiable now. This chapter is the final lock. You no longer depend on techniques. You embody principles. You are not calm because you practice today. You are calm because that's who you are. And identity scales. It affects how you speak, how you listen, how you decide, how you lead. Emotional control stops being something you manage. It becomes something people feel around you. Presence changes. Rooms shift. People adjust. Not because you demand it, because identity radiates. That's the final truth. Emotional control is a skill, but mastery is identity. You built the skill. You trained the discipline. You created the distance. You gained clarity. Now you wear it. This is who you are now. And from this identity, everything else becomes easier. Decisions simplify. Conflicts shrink. Focus sharpens. You don't rise emotionally anymore. You stay grounded. That's mastery. You don't need motivation tomorrow. You don't need reminders. Because identity doesn't forget. You don't try to be calm. You are calm. This is who you are now. And with that identity set, the lesson of this entire book comes full circle. You started as someone reacting unconsciously. You end as someone responding deliberately. You no longer wait for emotions to settle. You command them. You are trained. You are disciplined. You are in control. And control is freedom. Now it's time to close this book the only way it should be closed. Not with inspiration. With a challenge. Because identity is proven in action. You now understand the truth. Emotional control is not a talent. It is a skill. And skills are built, not wished for. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you win. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, you win. Every time you refuse to let emotions hijack your behavior, you take your power back. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You need discipline. From this moment forward, your challenge is simple. Catch the reaction. Create the pause. Choose the response. Because the person who controls their emotions controls their actions. And the person who controls their actions controls their future. Now go practice.